Today our topic is federalism. Oh, that sounds boring.
No. In fact, federalism is a very significant part of understanding how our government works, how it is divided, and much of our history is based on the idea of federalism.
So what exactly is federalism? Well, it's a way of organizing government so that there are two or more levels of government that have formal authority over the same area and people.
I thought you said this wasn't boring.
Yeah.
Here's a basic concept. If you live in Tennessee, go Vols, then the state of Tennessee can pass laws that affect you, and so can the national government. Seems like a lot of government that is affecting me.
Yeah, most governments don't have a federal system. In fact, only 11 of 190 do. Most have unitary systems in which all the power resides in the central or national government. There's also a third form, a confederation, kind of like the Articles of Confederation or the Confederacy during the Civil War, and in those, most of the government power is at the local level, and the national government's really, really weak. These tend to be rare these days.
So why did we go with the federal form of government? Well, at the Constitutional Convention, most delegates knew they needed a stronger government, but they also didn't really like the idea of each state losing power. After all, they were much more independent than they were united. So out of practical reason, the federal system seemed to be the most logical.
Well, the division of power, at least at the Constitutional Convention, they knew they needed a stronger national government. But the states still liked having power, and every state liked being special, even Rhode Island. So there was no way they would give up too much authority.
But in order to get a stronger national government, you need to specifically state what powers each level would have and what powers they didn't have.
States would have specific things they couldn't do, that they were either held by the national government or retained by individuals, such as taxing imports, coining money, or even issuing paper money. They couldn't enter into treaties with foreign countries or declare war, and over time, other rights have been denied states that weren't necessarily happy about that.
No, couldn't do any of these things.
No.
So what about disputes? What if a law affecting someone in Tennessee went against the national law? Who wins? This is where we talk about national supremacy. According to the Supremacy Clause, found in the second paragraph of Article 6, it tells us what three things are the law of the land. Number 1, the Constitution. Number 2, laws of the national government, as long as they are consistent with the Constitution, and treaties, which only the national government can make. These three things are supreme.
This doesn't sound like a big deal until we look at history and see how this affected our country.
So, have you ever heard of the Civil War? We automatically think of it as a struggle over slavery, but at the heart, the debate was over federalism. Does the U.S. government have authority to change laws about slavery if states also have different laws?
And a little more recently, we also have to consider federalism when it comes to the civil rights movement. States have segregation laws, but does that infringe on rights that are guaranteed in the Constitution? We now know that it does, but many laws that have been put into place to enforce segregation were state laws that states felt like were legitimate.
In 1954, when the Supreme Court said that school segregation wasn't okay in the Constitution, many southern states argued that the national government was overstepping its authority, and according to the Constitution, the states could determine the rules regarding education. And then, later on, public places, voting, jobs, they were all caught in the federalism debate.
And then the 10th Amendment. Even though the Constitution is supreme, it still has limits, and some of those limits pertain to the rights of states. National government can't usurp a state's power. But let's face it, if rights of individuals are denied, the states can't be maintained.
As early as 1819, the debate between the state and the national powers was debated by the Supreme Court. The McCulloch versus Maryland case involved the Bank of the U.S. To summarize, the national government created a bank. Did the Constitution say it could? Well, not specifically. When Maryland is a state for those of you that are geographically challenged, taxed the bank, it was a whopping $15,000 per year. The bank refused to pay because states cannot tax an agency of the national government.
Yeah, Chief Justice John Marshall, kind of a big deal, and the rest of the Supreme Court decided Maryland couldn't tax the bank. Ho-hum, so big deal, right? It really was. Part of the argument dealt with the fact the U.S. government didn't have the right in the Constitution to create a bank.
But the Supreme Court said that the U.S. government did have a right to create the bank. Why? Well, the Constitution says in order for Congress to regulate the economy, the bank was necessary and proper. And the so-called Elastic Clause becomes part of the history of America and an important tool for the U.S. government to expand power.
There's a bunch of cases that address the issues of federalism, and I'm sure you'll be required to see more of these cases, but it all boils down to power. Who has power, how much, what kind? They are obvious, or are they not? Not always.
So let's review the powers. First, there are enumerated powers, those specifically listed in the Constitution, more specifically Article 1, Section 8. They are listed and, well, kind of numbered. it.
That was good.